Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more. Dell.
And that is that. A 9-wicket win, as we were expecting from India, to wrap up their group stage of the Super 12 the ICC Men's T20 World Cup. It was pretty easy once Rohit and Rahul got going, and the fact that Namibia let that half chance early go, then you think it was always going to be India. Not that there's any doubt after 132 is all that they managed. We look back at Namibia's campaign. They can leave this World Cup with their heads held high, and we look forward perhaps for India. We've looked back enough on this side already, and Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout powered by Dell. We'll have the company of Ajit, Agarkar, Peter Borren, and first up, Tom Moody. 4 balls too soon. 14.4 is what he said. 15.2 is where it's finished. Not bad. I'll give that to you, Tom, within the margin. Just what we expected from India, I guess.
Yeah, look, I'm surprised actually you remembered the 14.4 prediction, but yeah, look, it was a pretty comfortable, cruisy win for India. It was nearly never got out of second gear, both with bat and ball. To be honest with you, they just got the job done as they needed to get done. There wasn't any fanfare, but I think there's a sense of regret on how their campaign has gone, and there's also a sense of what it could have been, because we all know what capabilities this Indian side's got, and what particularly T20 stars they've got amongst them in their squad. It just hasn't clicked this time.
It effectively didn't click in 2 games. It needed to click 1 out of 2 games, Ajit. Now, where does that leave you as a side? A side that will undergo some transition with new management, new leadership, and whatnot. Would you tell you that's okay? We can stick to the same template, same group of players, and we will likely get it right and not always lose 2 pressure games? Or would you say no? We will always be vulnerable. These 3 wins at the end haven't quite changed that. So we need to change. What's the takeaway now?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to keep it into perspective. I don't think these 3 wins should actually make you look at it differently if you're already looking at it differently after the first 2 losses. I think there was a big blunder in dropping Rohit Sharma to number 3 after that first game. Who knows what the situation would have been if he had opened in that game. India perhaps could have got to a score which they might have defended, and the story would have been completely different. So that's a massive mistake that India did make, and we said so on the day as well. I'm sure they'll look at certain players. It's still what, 12 months or a little bit more away, the World Cup, the next one that comes around. So you'll have to identify going forward. And T20 moves so quickly. You can see some of the teams that are successful are moving forward. So you've got to keep up with that. I don't know whether India really need to change the template. I think obviously there's no doubt at the moment, perhaps due to some form in the middle order, there is that dependence on the top 2 who are world-class players. And that is something that India might have to look at. But come a few weeks, few months time, you might have the middle order in better form, and that then may not look as bad. So there are certainly a few things to look at, few things to build on, maybe create a little bit more sort of bench strength, if you like, or sure of which players are going to be on that bench. But that's in the coming months. I don't necessarily think they have to change the template. I think there's the top quality in that Indian team. You just have to sort of believe. And a couple of bad losses, or they didn't play well enough, and the other 2 teams played really well on the day, and you move on to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come to perhaps a few more questions on just what you both have said right now, and we'll talk about Virat Kohli a bit more too. But before that, let's spend a moment on Namibia, shall we? Peter, you could say a surprise package perhaps of the tournament. For those of us that weren't following their cricket going into it, we thought Ireland and Netherlands would be the likelier contenders, along with Sri Lanka from round 1 to make it through here. They managed to win their first ever World Cup game, their first ever Super 12 game. They beat Scotland, a higher ranked team than them. They leave this World Cup with their heads held high.
Absolutely, they will. I mean, the fact, and you've just mentioned it, the fact that they beat Scotland, Netherlands, and Ireland, a great result for Namibia, and then of course the great result that comes out of that is the experiences that they've had against some of the top teams. I think, as in terms of perhaps the lack of competitive matches they had against the top teams, or even not really having any chance at looking at in terms of a surprise result. I think you have to be fair about their limitations, and some of those, couple of those teams in Ireland and the Netherlands will probably look and think maybe they, possibly with more experience that they have, and perhaps a bit more depth, could have done a little bit more damage. But from a Namibian perspective, what more can you do? They played 100% to within those limitations. I thought they were very disciplined. I actually think tonight again they were pretty good. How you're going to bowl to those top three, particularly if you don't get that early wicket, which we talked about at halftime, and they had that opportunity actually. Then you're going to lose that game in 15 overs or 14 overs, or maybe even less. With those guys playing with their freedom, Namibia can be very proud of their tournament. I think they're really well led. I think they will gain a lot from this going through to World Cup Division 2 that they're in against UAE, Oman, Scotland. They've got a lot of ODI cricket coming up, and this will definitely help in their development and also help in terms of that league, because they have to win that league to try and join the big boys in ODI cricket. It's definitely going to help them.
I wonder what you make, Peter, of just what this tournament has meant for the associate sides. We always look forward to perhaps that one giant killing game, and T20 you think is the best format suited for it, brings the teams closer. We didn't see that just yet. If you take out Scotland v Bangladesh in round 1, round 2 did not, or the Super 12s didn't give us that. Yes, there were a lot of one-sided games among the full members too, but how do you see this World Cup as to what it's done for the associate nations that participated?
Yeah, I think in terms of their learnings that they would have got out of it, what I said before the game as well, in terms of having the exposure against the subcontinental teams, which we saw Namibia and Scotland really struggle with, to be fair, on these surfaces. Yes, Scotland beat Bangladesh, but that was in Oman, and that wicket was definitely different from what they saw in the UAE. It was probably more suited to Scotland in terms of the pace and bounce, and yeah, so of course it's a shame for us as associate sort of representatives not to have seen a boil over. In this group, the one chance I think was New Zealand, and unfortunately Scotland had that chance and they didn't quite perform at their best that day. I think it's big. There'll be, as again, Netherlands and Ireland. They'll look back and think, oh, could we have made a better fist of it? I'm not sure. But moving forward, Scotland and Namibia will definitely benefit from this, and they'll be in the. They don't have to go to an initial qualifier next year, so they'll be in the first round, both Scotland and Namibia, and obviously that's in Australia, a whole different kettle of fish. Actually, also, I'm not saying that the wickets there are perfectly suited to them, but probably more suited than the UAE. So they'll have learnt an awful lot, and they'll be better for it. And I'd say, in 12 months' time in Australia, I think there's more chance of perhaps they're upset because of the learnings that these guys have had, but also because of the conditions. Definitely the conditions. They did not suit these two sides one little bit. And that's why if people are watching these two teams for the first time, they might be a little bit underwhelmed, as actually we probably all are a little bit with the performances, but they'll be better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always room for these nations at an ICC event, and it's only a matter of time before they make a bigger impact. So well done to Namibia and Scotland, and the other teams that did feature in round 1. Peter Borren, this is where we say thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you as part of our coverage on T20 Time. I hope you've enjoyed it, Peter.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. I mean, it's been great. There's nothing better than just watching a bunch of cricket and then talking a bit of waffle about it. So I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Peter. And please, I hope you welcome us when we come to Amsterdam. We don't mind a trip there sooner or later once things are easier to get there. So thank you so much, Peter. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys.
Right. Peter Borren, former Dutch captain, had had the privilege of getting his perspective right through this T20 World Cup. As we continue this chat with Ajit, Agarkar and Tom Moody, mainly essentially on India and what lies ahead. And one question will be about Virat Kohli. So let's get into that one. Very interestingly, he's going to be a batter for the first time in a long time in this format, Tom. He's not going to captain in the IPL. He's not going to captain in this team. There are reservations about a one-dimensionalness that India possess at the top of the order. We've seen in the last three games, albeit against lesser opposition. If the start is good, Kohli sometimes has to find himself shuffle down and not necessarily being the batter that needs to come in the middle. Yet, when early wickets fall, there's no one better that I can think of than Kohli to bat. So, where does that leave Virat Kohli the batter for you in the T20 eyesight going forward?
Well, I think, if anything, him handing over the captaincy is only going to be a bonus for him. It's going to sort of take a pressure off and allow him just to play with a little bit more of a freer head and play with a bit more freedom. The most important thing, I believe, with Virat Kohli is Rahul Dravid, the new coach, and whoever the captain may be, makes it clear what his role is. I think Virat Kohli's got the capability of playing any sort of role. He's that type of player. You know, he's in that very high category. But I think that clear instruction around what his role is and what's expected of him in preparation for the next World Cup is really important. Whether that's batting at three, whether that's batting at the top of the order, wherever that may be, that needs to be identified and clearly communicated to him.
Ajit, are you of that opinion that there is still value to Kohli even if he bats at three, or at this stage of his career, there's greater value if he opens, which is a hard place to get to with Rohit and Rahul?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if he opens, there is more value, isn't it? I mean, in the Indian team in particular, franchise cricket, it's a bit different. You can be a bit more fluid. Look, Virat Kohli's batted number 3 in T20 cricket before and done exceptionally well. He perhaps isn't in that sort of form at the moment. It could very well change, but I'm with Tom on this. I mean, whoever the captain is, whether it's Rohit, whether they go for somebody younger to take this T20 team forward, might have to define the role a bit better. And come the next World Cup, you want to be sure what your best 11 is. And look, Virat Kohli at his best certainly is in that best 11. Whether, in T20 cricket at number 3, it's highly unlikely that with Rohit and Rahul around, he's going to open ahead of them. So that is a bit of a challenge. But, the rest of the middle order, you said it before. I mean, if a wicket falls early, there's no one better than him to come and bat. That could very well change maybe in 12 months' time. 12 months is a long time. So, who knows? At the moment, I don't think, but it'll be nice if his role is defined. Australian conditions will be completely different, and you might need Virat Kohli at number 3 there. So it's a bit too early. It'll just depend on what kind of makeup the Indian T20 team is looking at, what kind of fluidity they're looking at through their batting, who's the captain might have a big bearing on it of which way this team's looking at, and we'll probably find out over the next even the next month or so, or maybe a couple of weeks, once the team is picked New Zealand, because in all likelihood, the captain, whoever it is, whether it's Rohit or somebody else, will certainly play that series, I would have thought.
Yeah. What do you say to the argument, Tom, that I've read quite a bit on a lot of T20 tactic websites, and a lot of cricket writers seem to have the opinion that in an ideal Indian T20 side, you cannot have both Rohit and Kohli, because that means you're keeping players like Ishan Kishan or Surya Kumar Yadav, more flexible batters, out of the 11, that you can afford to play only one or the other. They both struggle against spin early on. We've read about their matchups. They have a similar sort of template on how to bat. What do you say to that theory?
Well, I just go back to the point I made about role clarity. I think that both of them have got the ability to play a more impactful brand of cricket against spin. At the moment, they're playing at a certain level in a certain gear to accommodate what they've always done. I would be. I'd be communicating and expressing that needs to shift, that gear needs to shift. These are the things we need to look at, because if we're going to move in the direction we need to move and compete in these ICC events and look to win the World Cup down under, we need to be bringing this brand of cricket to the table. What we've done so far has been good, but not good enough. So we all individually need to look within our own games and look to how we can expand our own games. I think both Rohit and Virat Kohli are both exceptional players and have the ability, given the direction to be able to move their games even further forward to where they are at the moment.
Interesting that Tom says that, Ajit. I wonder if you share that view on whether at this stage of their careers that Virat Kohli can perhaps have a different game. We have looked at his numbers about how whether he goes hard enough against spin outside a power play. Yes, these are recent numbers. Do you believe the game is still there for Kohli to bat differently?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I mean, he's one of those great players you're talking about, and they can turn it around very, very quickly. So, it might not look that way. Again, I go back. Australia is going to be different conditions. The pitches might actually be quite good to bat on. There'll be pace and bounce in them, and it could very well suit him as well with the ball coming on. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt. Virat Kohli's got the ability. I don't need to say it. Uh, the role clarity might be important. India would be hoping that 4, 5, 6 as well are playing better. Who those 4, 5, 6 are might be important to identify as well, because there's a lot of talent around. Not just the guys who are playing right now, but even outside. There are a few options sitting outside as well. But look, I mean, ideally you want Virat Kohli playing as well as he can or as well as he has throughout his career. Then I don't think it'll be a problem even if he bats at number 3.
All right, fair enough. Now, we have strong man, brave man to argue otherwise of Virat Kohli, but you think he's certainly got a long future as a batter in this Indian T20I side. Let's talk about another aspect, though, which we won't get to see now. Kohli, the captain, is done. He will obviously, in many ways, contribute. You think he's still the white ball captain in ODI cricket, and he is the captain in Test cricket. But as we look at takeaways from Kohli, the T20I captain, as well as Ravi Shastri, Ajit, you spoke of what is clearly a tactical blunder when they drop Rohit to 3 in the game against New Zealand. Is that also somewhere going to be a tag that they hold? That tactically, he didn't quite get it right when it comes to selections, tactics, perhaps in T20. He's only had the one World Cup. But from what you've seen of Virat, the white ball captain too, is that somewhere where this group and this leadership group also fell short tactically?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's tactically, but the team selection certainly over the last few years. There's you. I mean, it'll be difficult to give examples right now. There are few of them where I mean, you look at that semi-final as well. They lost to New Zealand in 2019 World Cup, and suddenly there were 3 wicket keepers playing in that 11 from nowhere. Dinesh Karthik, Rishabh Pant, and MS Dhoni. Those sort of things. You feel like for as good a team as India is, that feels like something that a team's perhaps not. I mean, if that was the plan initially, then it should have happened early in the tournament. It almost feels like a reaction to what was going on around. Even here, I mean, I still can't get my head around not opening with Rohit Sharma in the second game of the tournament, which is a must-win game against New Zealand. So there's clearly, I mean, the team selection I think there was a period when there was the same 11 did play for a certain number of games, which was quite a few under Virat and Ravi. So not always a blunder. Sometimes, of course, you pick teams according to what the conditions are. But there have been more than a few occasions where perhaps the best 11 or the right 11 they haven't picked, and sometimes it's not cost India the game because India's got so much talent in that team. And it's worked their way, but there have been enough instances. So yeah, that is one thing that over the last few years you could look at. It's just that they didn't bat well in these first 2 games. It's as simple as that in this particular World Cup for sure. If they batted better in the first 2 games, we would be talking something else.
Yeah, fair enough. Tom, wonder what your thoughts are on that. Ajit's highlighted the two most high-profile examples, and we almost joke at times that you can never trust Kohli to play the same 11 back-to-back. That's a joke more for Test cricket, but whether it's something that will remain synonymous with this group, the Kohli-Shastri era, the one thing that they didn't quite master was selections, especially in white ball cricket.
I think one thing that needs to be respected is that moving pieces, as in players around positions and also playing 11s, creates vulnerability, creates uncertainty. And I think that certainly has been the case with India's campaign. And that can be caused by an overwhelming amount of riches, which India have got. They've got plenty of options, plenty of headaches, plenty of opinions that are coming in from various media outlets and elsewhere, talking about the combinations that should or shouldn't be playing, and sometimes those pressures and those noises can influence decisions, and then you get these knee-jerk emotional decisions. The very best teams are the ones that have that stability around selection and that trust around their players. And if you lose that sort of that edge of backing a combination, backing a style of cricket, you then become a vulnerable side under pressure.
What do you see now? And now that the tournament, we know the finality of what this tournament is achieved. India are out. When we spoke about Rahul Dravid last time, that wasn't the case. We still were waiting to see if there is an upset on the cards. But now India are out. A new coach is set to take over. Rohit Sharma, he will be captain. Tom, what's the first course of action that needs to be taken for this T20 side?
Well, I think firstly, the new captain and the coach need to sit down and discuss what they believe is a brand that is going to be current in the next 12 months. Are they going about the right way of playing right now, or do they need to make adjustments? And with those adjustments, does that mean personnel, or does that mean those clear conversations and that communication to those individuals around what their role is and what their responsibilities are? Obviously, the selectors play a role in those discussions, and I think you need to make sure that with 12 plus months out before another World Cup, you've got to have not only your first 11 sorted, but you've got to have what falls in behind that. So if there is the unexpected with injury or form, you have a seamless changeover instead of it being a panic where one person moves. Multiple people move in a batting order or in a bowling lineup to accommodate just one casualty. You just need that seamless change where everyone understands exactly where they fit in the puzzle.
It's a curious time, isn't it, Ajit? With another World Cup in 12 months, normally you think captain or a new coach would have more time than that. But how do you see what's the immediate challenge you see for Rohit and Rahul?
Uh, I mean, like Tom said, they'll firstly have to decide which way they want to take this team, or what way they want this team to play. Whether it's the same way that India has been playing. I mean, they've been quite successful the way they've been playing. I certainly think the bowling reserves need to get better, or identifying who those people are. Apart from the guys who are here, maybe another three or four of, in particular, the seam department. I think the spinners kind of, who even the guys who are not here, say Chehel or Akshar Patel or those guys, perhaps Kuldeep Yadav, if he gets back into form, could be a handy one in Australia. Uh, so those guys, but the seam bowling department is something that they'll probably look at. There are quite a few T20 games now that are scheduled over the next few months, including the IPL. So you'd get a fair idea. But I'd still look at how guys go in international cricket or in the bilateral series. Yes, IPL is important, but sometimes you can form an opinion because of a couple of good performances in the IPL. You don't want to do that. You want to still see them how they perform against some of the better international teams, if you like, because that pressure is different, and that is eventually what you have to deal with when you're playing in a World Cup. So uh, they've got a bit of work to do. It's not a major surgery, fortunately, because of the options that Indian cricket has at the moment. But there's certainly some spots that they need to look at over the next 2 or 3 weeks or couple of months. South Africa and New Zealand, the two series, we'll probably find out a bit more, and we can discuss it a bit more.
Fair enough. Well, that's pretty much it then. A campaign that promised so much that fizzed out early. Although, before we do leave, I'll just get one quick reaction to what Ravi Shastri said today, though, about speaking of the sort of mental and physical toll it's taken on his players. Said they would have ideally liked more time in between the IPL and the World Cup. The outgoing coach with some strong words. Tom, would you see where he's coming from?
Yeah, look, I think to me, it's just not the transition from the IPL into this World Cup. I think India is the number one ticket when it comes to playing any format of the game, purely because of what they bring commercially to the countries that they play against. So India's schedule is as full as anyone's in world cricket. So one lesson that can be learnt from that is around management of players and the rotation of players, which India have tried to do. But just, is that something they can do better? It's only going to continue to grow their bench strength. But at the end of the day, I don't think the volume and the demand for teams to play against India is going to change. Maybe just the approach around how they're picking their sides and how they're making sure they're looking after their players.
Ajit, your quick reaction to Ravi's words today?
Yeah, I mean, the bubbles haven't helped. Hopefully, over time, they get relaxed. And this was a unique situation. I think the IPL just got suspended. That's why the IPL was before the World Cup. There never is a situation where you play the IPL and then you play a T20 World Cup. It is never going to happen. It was one of those unique things that happened, or unfortunate things that happened, but you knew it well in advance. So you perhaps, if you think it was mental and physical tiredness, which is obviously the case, then perhaps India should have prepared a little bit better. I mean, there are other teams or other players from some other teams that either opted out or they're dealing with it. So as tough as it is, it doesn't happen often. This is a one-off, and unfortunately, India couldn't respond, particularly in the first couple of games. Keep coming back to that. One of those wins, and India still in the World Cup and with a real chance to win it. So as difficult as it has been, and like Tom says, because England was a big series as well, a lot of the players involved in that high-profile series, intense series. It's taken a lot out of the players, but it is a one-off where the IPL is half of the IPL was played before the World Cup. It's not helped, but I'm sure the players would be disappointed that they couldn't quite cope with it.
Yep, fair enough. That's it then. That's it. Let's take a break ourselves, shall we? The Indian team deserves one. They're going to check out of their bubble, so wish them some time off. Although some of them are going to go straight into one as soon as they land in India, because the New Zealand series starts in about a week's time or so, another 9 days, and India New Zealand's going to be up and running. So that's just how we roll in this part of the world when it comes to our cricket. Tom Moody, Ajit Agarkar, thank you very much. You got a cracking set of semi-finals to join us for, and Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket Footy 20 Timeout, powered by Dell. England v New Zealand on Wednesday, followed by Australia, Pakistan on Thursday. So make sure you join us then. And before we leave you, though, the UAE is a nice place to look at and visit once you get out of the bubble, which I hope the Indian team maybe will on their way to the airport. So let's look at some stunning visuals from the host cities. These visuals powered by Dell.
Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more.